Today we're going to be talking about Antarctica, Chinese territory since ancient times.
Yeah, that's what they'd like you to think.
I'm sure the whole world has been.
I'm sure there's a Qing Dynasty manuscript that shows that they had herding rights in Antarctica or something.
The Chinese buffalo of Antarctica.
Yeah, there you go.
Well-known story. Well, so this is interesting because I think a lot of people just think of Antarctica as like a giant ice cube that has no value whatsoever. Why is Antarctica important?
Well, it's important for a number of reasons. There's typical to most of these things, there's the possibility that there may be energy resources, there may be rare earth elements. There's certainly in the Southern Ocean, we know that there's fishing stocks. There's also potential military importance. You know, it sits at the South Pole, which has the ability from a military standpoint to impact satellite communications and telescopic arrays. And there are a number of different military applications that could benefit a country that had a presence near the South Pole, or that had the ability to kind of have unimpeded access to Antarctica. So there's a lot there. It's not just frozen, terra nullius. There's a lot that control or dominance in Antarctica gets you as a superpower.
Well, you mentioned the military application of Antarctica. According to the Antarctica Treaty, countries aren't allowed to establish military bases or conduct military activity in Antarctica.
Well, that's what the treaty says. That's what most countries abide by. And if they don't abide by it, for instance, in certain cases, you're allowed to use military personnel and transport aircraft to go and facilitate your scientific endeavors. So, for instance, the United States uses Air Force C-130s to take the National Science Foundation to its McMurdo station and to different scientific sites in Antarctica. And that's fine. And what we do is we send a notification to the Antarctic Treaty system per the requirements of the treaty saying, hey, at this date, at this time, a C-130 with markings so-and-so is going to show up on the continent, and it's going to have Master Sergeant so-and-so and Captain so-and-so, and it's all very above board and it's very legalistic. What the Chinese have done is they've started showing up with PLA personnel at their research stations, and they don't tell the treaty system that they're using PLA officers in what are supposed to be scientific capacities. We only found this out when some netizens were able to sleuth this out and make it public. So the Chinese have been in violation of the non-militarization parts of the treaty. And that's just the surface. There's a lot we don't know. There are a lot of unknown unknowns. And that's what I think has a lot of us concerned.
When was the last time the U.S. inspected any of the Chinese research facilities there?
Because inspections are part of the Antarctica Treaty, correct?
Inspections are the only mechanism to actually ensure that the treaty's being complied with. And so in 2011, the United States did an inspection. Australia has done one a little bit more recently, I think 2015. New Zealand hasn't done an inspection in 15 years, and they're really the most capable of the Antarctic powers that are aligned with us. And yet they really have not done any inspections in a decade and a half. What really concerns me is the Chinese most recently built a station called Kunlun. And Kunlun is down near the magnetic South Pole. And it's on the highest ice feature on the continent, which from a military standpoint, that's going to give you a lot of potential advantages if you're interested in satellites and arrays and different things. What I'm particularly concerned about is the fact that the United States, Australia, New Zealand, no one other than Chinese nationals has ever visited the Kunlun station. We have no idea what goes on there. It's never been held to any scrutiny. And the choice of location is so strategic that it raises a lot of questions. The only way of which we're going to get answers to is by actually having boots on the ground and doing inspections.
I think what's crazy is, like, 2011 is the last time the U.S. inspected any station. And in 2011, China had not built any artificial islands in the South China Sea, right? Like that's how long ago it was, right? And then, so we know that China has the ability to build and militarize in just a period of a few years. So we really need to be inspecting these like every year, right? Or can't we at least get like some kind of like presence there? Like, is it not impossible to like fly U.S. personnel to visit?
So the logistics are really why. It's a combination, in my opinion, of logistics and political will. So, anything in Antarctica is hard. It's just difficult. It's far away. It's cold. It's normal logistical considerations are amplified tenfold in everything you do on the continent. And so when we're thinking about how the United States is going to do what you're describing, we just haven't made the investments for a long period of time in the type of things that we used to do to be an Antarctic power. So icebreakers, right? We don't have the icebreaker capability that we used to have, which is critical for us to be able to hit some of the Chinese Great Wall Station, which is closer to South America. That's where an icebreaker would come in handy. We don't have that capability right now. We used to have specially fitted C-130s in large numbers that could land on Antarctic airfields, even in the winter months, the Antarctic winter. Those have really been neglected, and they're in short supply. So we haven't made those decisions. We also, frankly, as someone who served in government and was focused on this, it was not a high priority for most of the time I was there, and particularly at the level of senior officials who are thinking about competition with China. The Arctic was beginning to get some traction. Secretary Pompeo talked about it a lot, paid attention to it. We obviously had a lot of focus on the East and South China Seas. We had even increasing focus on what China was doing in the Atlantic and their desire to increase their presence on the west coast of Africa. But Antarctica just did not seem to penetrate as an area where it was worth pressing investments and raising the focus on Chinese ambitions to the fore. And I think that's got to change at the highest levels before we're going to see the money put forward to take these kind of logistical investments. Because it's expensive stuff. Everything in Antarctica is it's hard to do and it's costly. And we've got to have that political will to make those investments.
How big physically, like geographically, is Antarctica compared to like the continental United States?
Yeah, I don't have a good comparison, but I'll tell you just the effort of getting from Christchurch, New Zealand, where the Antarctica New Zealand has a very robust base in the South Island of New Zealand, where we do a lot of our National Science Foundation staging. Just the effort to get from there to the New Zealand bases, which are not, really just a couple of hours flight. The logistical preparation involved in doing that is, millions of dollars, is incredibly manpower intensive. So if you think about just really a relatively short hop across from New Zealand to Antarctica, you think about doing that to do inspections of multiple bases across the width of the continent. You've got, most likely, I think, diplomatically, the best way to do this, it can't be the U.S. going and inspecting Chinese bases alone. It's got to be the U.S. with partners and allies inspecting multiple countries' bases. This isn't about targeting China. This isn't about making China the victim. This is about, we have a treaty system. The treaty system requires inspections to make it a viable long-term entity. And so everyone should be subject to the same inspection regime. And that includes the United States. And we've been inspected before. We should be inspected again. And it should be part of our kind of international effort to uphold norms and values. If we subscribe to a treaty, we should be anxious to see every aspect of it upheld.
Is China inspecting our bases?
When I was in government, there was discussion that it might happen. I never saw it happen. I would not be surprised if Eventually, a decision was made that they were going to begin a more vigorous inspection regime themselves. Partially, I think, because it would support their claim to be the predominant power in Antarctica. But so far, where I've seen the most activity, the Russians continue to be very active in Antarctica. Some of the Scandinavian countries like Norway are very vigorous in upholding the inspection regime. Argentina is another one that pays a lot of attention to it. But we'll have to watch and see what the Chinese do ultimately in that